Hello? Is this Jimmy Pearson? A voice on the other end of the line asked. No, my name is Jimmy Greyhawk, Jimmy replied. My wife Connie kept her maiden name Pearson. Well, this is Dr. Sahid Owari, the voice continued. 6 months ago, your wife and I began an affair here in the hospital. What? What is this? A joke? Jimmy exclaimed, feeling confused and angry. No, she was one fine piece of ass and a great slut, the voice said callously. Listen, I don't have time. The reason for my call is that I am about to return to Saudi Arabia. And about 2 months ago, your wife left me for a new doctor, Gregory Zenger. I hope you are not a weak cuckold and will take revenge. Wait a minute, how do I know you're telling the truth? Jimmy questioned, feeling a mix of emotions. Well, if you get to storage room 506, at the hospital, in the next 15 minutes, you can probably catch her and Gregory doing this, the voice said, leaving Jimmy shocked and speechless. Sorry, my plane is landing. Good luck, Cook, the voice said before hanging up. Jimmy couldn't believe what he had just heard. Was his beloved wife, the mother of his daughter, having sex with other men? It was too hard for him to believe. He was a slow man, taking his time to process the shocking news. His first thought was how to prove or disprove what he had heard. And then it occurred to him, Jerry. Jerry was a neighbor of Jimmy, who worked as a security guard at the hospital where his wife, a nurse, also worked. He called Jerry on his cell phone, hoping for some answers. Hello, Jerry Austin Security, how can I help? Jerry answered. Jerry, this is Jimmy, he said, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. Listen, are you at work? Jimmy asked urgently. Yes, I'm doing my rounds now. What's the matter? Jerry replied. Maybe it's nothing special, but some Arab doctor just called me and said Connie was having an affair. She and some other doctor are supposedly having sex right now in storage room 506. Is there any way to get in there? And if she's there, take pictures. Guy, are you sure? Connie? Jerry asked, surprised. No, I'm not sure. That's why I need you to find out. Please, I need this service, no problem. I definitely owe you for all the carpentry work you did for me. I'm already close. I'll let you know if I see anything, and send you pictures if I do. I really hope this isn't true. You and Maddie deserve better. Thank you, Jimmy said to Jerry, feeling grateful for his friend's help. While Jimmy waited for Jerry's update, he tried to understand what was happening. He had dedicated his life to his wife, Connie, and their 10-year-old daughter, Maddie. They had built their house together, exactly the way Connie wanted, over the course of 3 years. Everything seemed perfect. Connie appeared happy, and their family life was filled with love. But then, Jimmy thought about the past 6 months. Connie started working longer hours and staying overnight at the hospital, even when she had had only a few hours between shifts. Their intimate life suffered, which Jimmy understood, given her demanding schedule. However, Connie never complained about anything, and seemed to enjoy their time together just as much as before. After all, she would never jeopardize their marriage or the happiness of their daughter, right? But doubts started to creep in. The weight of uncertainty grew heavier. Suddenly, his phone rang, breaking Jimmy's train of thought. It was Jerry. I'm sorry, man, but your wife and Dr. Zender had sex like two horny teenagers, Jerry said, his voice filled with regret. I have photos and videos to send you. I don't think they noticed me. I'm really sorry. If you want me to do anything else for you, let me know. Jimmy's heart sank as he watched the video and saw his wife eagerly engaging in the act of infidelity. It was a painful sight, and tears streamed down his face. He rarely cried, but this betrayal was too much to bear. Dad. Maddie. What are you doing over there? Maddie's voice interrupted, concerned. Go back to bed, honey. Everything is fine, Jimmy replied, trying to compose himself. I heard the phone ringing. And then I heard you crying. What's the matter? Maddie persisted, showing maturity beyond her years. I am 10 years old. I'm not a child. I need to know, Maddie insisted, her voice filled with determination. Jimmy realized that he couldn't keep the truth from his daughter. She deserved to know what was happening, as it affected her too. I'm crying because I just received proof that your mother, how should I put it, loved another man in the hospital, Jimmy explained, struggling to find the right words. Maddie's eyes filled with sadness and confusion. It was a difficult moment for both of them, but they knew they had each other to lean on as they navigated this painful chapter in their lives. I'm trying to figure out what to do, Jimmy said, feeling lost and unsure. Connie will be finishing work soon, and I think I should wait to talk to her then. I don't think she'll be coming home today. I overheard her on the phone saying she was happy to spend the whole night with someone. At first, I thought she meant work, but now I'm not so sure, Jerry chimed in. I think you should call her right now. Let's see what she says. Maybe there's a good explanation. Jimmy hesitated. He remembered that he was told not to call Connie on her cell phone while she was working, unless it was an emergency. He believed this situation qualified as an emergency. After several rings, Connie answered, sounding breathless. Jimmy, is something wrong with Maddie? You seem out of breath, honey. Are you okay? I didn't have my phone with me, so I had to run to get it. What's happened? Jimmy could sense the panic in Connie's voice. The memory of the video recording flashed in Jimmy's mind, erasing any desire to be understanding. I thought you might have been short of breath because you just had sex with Dr. Zender, Jimmy blurted out, unable to hold back his pain and anger. There was a long pause before Connie finally responded, Oh crap, he knows. Don't worry, Greg. I'll take care of it. Jimmy could hear her speaking to someone else in the background. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, Jimmy. But I'm glad you know now, Connie continued, her voice filled with a mix of regret and defiance. This doesn't change the fact that I love you and our marriage. My work is incredibly stressful, dealing with life and death situations. I deserve something more to handle all this responsibility. It's just a little extra sex on the side to reduce stress. It doesn't affect our marriage or my role as Maddie's mother. Jimmy felt confused and hurt. I'm afraid I don't quite understand it that way, he replied, his voice filled with sadness. Look, I need to get back to work. That's how it is, Connie said, her tone final. You have two options. 1. Let everything be as it is. We continue to raise our daughter. You get a loving wife who gives you sex from time to time, but sometimes has fun with sex with other men. Or 2, you file for divorce, and I get half of our assets, the house, and primary custody of Maddie. You will get every weekend and every other major holiday to visit your daughter. Here's how divorce works in our state. I guarantee that I will make your life miserable and find every excuse possible to cancel your scheduled visits. I know how much you love Maddie, so you really only have one choice. After I finish this shift, Greg and I will go to a motel and spend the night together. Tomorrow, I'll work a regular day shift, and tomorrow night, I'll come home, and we can talk. You will see that it is better for you to just continue to live as you are. Bye. Jimmy and Maddie sat at the kitchen table, looking at each other with anger, disappointment, and sadness. Well, Maddie, I don't know what to do, Jimmy said, feeling lost. I don't think I can live here knowing that your mom has sex with other men. If I file for divorce, I won't be able to see you every day. I don't think at your age a judge would let you choose who you want to stay with. If I move out, do you think you can stay here with your mother? Hell no, Maddie replied firmly. Dad, I'm already a big girl. If I have a choice, I want to be with you. Jimmy sighed, realizing the difficult situation they were in. Looks like we don't have much choice. Dad, there's another choice, Maddie said, her eyes gleaming with determination. What is it? Jimmy asked, curious. Burn this bitch, Maddie said, shocking her father. What are you talking about? Jimmy asked, concerned. Maddie explained, remember my friend Beverly? Well, her dad caught Beverly's mom fooling around and just left. He took all the money he could and just disappeared. After some time, they caught him and arranged a terrible scam. You and I could leave her as little money as possible and just disappear. Her idea seemed quite feasible to Jimmy. Where will we go? You know where, Maddie replied, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Realizing what Maddie was offering, her father thought, I don't think they'll take me back. But you can ask. I had a vision of us returning to a place we once called home. Maddie was the granddaughter of the most respected spiritual director on the Turtle Mountain Chippewa Indian Reservation. Her father, Jimmy, had left the tribe when he joined the army with his friend Tommy White Elk.A. He was once an angry young man who had turned his back on his family and his people, leading to his expulsion from the tribe. However, after serving in Iraq, Jimmy's anger subsided, and he reconnected with his mother. During the time he spent alone with Maddie, Jimmy shared stories about their family, and especially about her grandmother, who held great spiritual wisdom. Over the years, Maddie began showing signs of having a special ability to perceive and interpret visions. However, Jimmy's wife, Connie, knew very little about his past or what he taught Maddie. He had made it clear that he didn't want to discuss anything from his life before the military, and Connie didn't press him with many questions. "Okay, I'll call," Jimmy said to Maddie. "Your mom won't be back until tomorrow. We have a lot to do until then." Meanwhile, Connie and Greg were getting ready for work after spending the night together. Connie felt disappointed. Greg could provide physical pleasure, but he didn't seem to know how to make love the way Jimmy did. Her doctor lover was only satisfying in bed twice during their 8-hour encounter. She tried to arouse him for a third time, but he failed to meet her expectations. Connie realized that part of the thrill of being with Dr. Zender, like with Albury before him, was the secret, forbidden aspect of their relationship. Now that Jimmy knew about her infidelity, the excitement of being with someone else wasn't as enticing. During her Monday afternoon shift at the hospital, Connie found herself with moments of rest, where she couldn't help but think about how she should end things with Greg and repair her relationship with Jimmy. After all, Greg's wife, who was a teacher, would be moving to their town with their 2 children once the school year ended. Connie could once again become a devoted wife, lover, and mother. And then, when everything returned to normal at home, she could find someone else for herself. She knew that Jimmy would never turn down intimacy with her or risk losing access to Maddie. At the end of her shift, Connie left the hospital and headed towards her car in the parking lot. As she approached, she noticed that all 4 of her tires had been punctured. How childish, she thought, feeling frustrated. "Well, here's a plan for you to do something nice when I get home." She tried to call Jimmy on his cell phone, but there was no answer. Determined to reach him, Connie borrowed a phone from one of her colleagues. However, when she called Jimmy's number, she received a message stating that the service for that number was no longer available. It seemed that he wanted to play dirty. Well, she could play that game too. The threat of divorce alone might be enough to make Jimmy realize his mistakes, but Connie knew she would have to make him grovel. She used the phone again to call a taxi, and on the way home, she thought of different ways to punish him. As they entered her neighborhood, she noticed a column of smoke and saw fire trucks and police cars. It seemed like one of her neighbors had a fire. But as the taxi got closer, Connie realized that it wasn't her neighbor's house burning, but her own. Connie quickly jumped out of the taxi, telling the driver to wait. She rushed towards her house, but the fire chief stopped her, ordering her to stay away. "But this is my home," she pleaded. "Where are my husband and daughter? Are they okay?" "I think they're fine," the fire chief replied. "Your neighbor said she saw them drive away right after they set fire to a pile of clothes." Confused and shocked, Connie looked out into her yard and saw a pile of her clothes on fire. On top of the pile were her wedding albums, filled with precious photos from her expensive wedding. They were disappearing to smoke. Looking at her house, Connie realized that although the fire was under control, there was little left of the home she had loved so much. She noticed her next-door neighbor, Mrs. Jensen, standing on the sidewalk, watching. As Connie approached her, Mrs. Jensen frowned. "They're gone. I hope you're happy now." Confused, Connie asked, "What are you talking about, Mrs. Jensen?" Mrs. Jensen sighed. "Jimmy and Maddie spoke to me before they started the fire. They wanted to make sure my home wasn't in danger. They told me what you did. I can't believe you could treat such a wonderful man and precious little girl so horribly. I hope it hurts you for a long time. It's just a misunderstanding," Connie tried to explain. "Wait, are you saying that Jimmy started the fire? But he built this house with his own hands. This was our home, our beautiful home. Where are they?" Mrs. Jensen shook her head sadly. "Your husband told me that since he built this house, he can destroy it. He said a home stopped being a home when you decided to stop being a wife and mother. He burned the house." "You burned the house down," Mrs. Jensen's words echoed in Connie's mind. Jimmy and Maddie were gone, and they planned to disappear where Connie would never find them. Mrs. Jensen shuffled away, leaving Connie in shock. The fire chief informed her that it would take several days before they could search for any surviving valuables in the house. He asked if she had somewhere to go, and after a pause, Connie said she would go to her parents. In the taxi, Connie's thoughts were filled with two options. Either Jimmy would come back, ask for forgiveness, and build an even better house, or she would seek revenge in a divorce. As they arrived at her parents' house, Connie realized her card had been rejected when she tried to pay the taxi fare. She asked the driver to wait while she collected the money from her father. With tears in her eyes, Connie rang the doorbell, seeking emotional support from her parents. When her father, Harry, opened the door, he only opened it partially. He asked, "What do you want?" "Dad, it's me, Connie. Let me in. Something terrible happened," Connie pleaded. Harry's voice was filled with disappointment as he replied, "Jimmy, I know what happened. He and Maddie stopped here on their way out of town. How could you? I loved him like the son I never had. She is our only granddaughter. We raised you better. I'm afraid we can no longer consider you our daughter." Confused and hurt, Connie tried to explain. "Dad, what are you talking about? It's just a misunderstanding. Jimmy will come back, and I'll sort everything out. Let me talk to Mom." Her father's voice was filled with anger. "Misunderstanding? Is that what you kids call it now? How can you? I've seen the photographs." Does he have photos? Oh my God, where is Mom? I need to explain everything to her," Connie desperately asked. The door didn't open any wider. Her father replied, "Your mother is in bed. The doctor had to prescribe a sedative. We're lucky she didn't have a heart attack when she saw the photos." Confused, Connie asked, "Did Jimmy show his mother the photographs?" "How could he?" Her father explained. "He didn't want to. But your mother said she would never believe that her daughter could do something so vile, so contrary to what she taught her, so contrary to what her religion taught her. So I handed her the photos, and as soon as she saw them, she fainted. She doesn't want to see you anytime soon, if at all." The door closed, leaving Connie in tears. She didn't have the courage to ask for money for a taxi. With a heavy heart, Connie returned to the taxi. The driver asked, "Where to now?" "It must be somewhere where you can get money." After some thought, Connie decided her credit card was no good either. She gave the driver the address of her younger sister. Connie didn't have a good relationship with Leslie, but her sister was a good aunt to Maddie. Leslie had gained a reputation at school and fell out of favor with their parents. Connie wasn't sure how she would be received, but Leslie was her only family. This time, the door swung wide open. Leslie had a knowing smile on her face. "Great. Good. I waited for you." "Dad probably called you?" Connie asked. Leslie replied, "No. Jimmy and Maddie came here on the way. I thought that Mom and Dad might not be receptive to their daughter cheating since they still aren't too happy with their past judgments about me." Before they went inside, Connie asked Leslie for a big favor. "Actually, 2 services. There's something wrong with my credit card, and I need to pay for a taxi." And then, Connie gathered the courage to ask her sister, "Is it possible to stay with you for a while? Jimmy burned down our house." After a short mental discussion, Lisa softened and replied, "Okay, I guess I owe you one." "Thank you." After paying the taxi driver and settling down on the sofa in her sister's living room, Connie asked, "What did you mean when you said you owe it to me?" "I don't remember lending anything to you recently." Lisa sighed and opened up. "You didn't do this. I grew up in the shadow of Miss Goody Two-Shoes and her high grades, perfect looks, and noble career. You made me sick. I was compared to you all the time, and I couldn't handle it. I became a failure, but it made me different from you, which is what I thought I wanted. Now, you have made me a good daughter. Everyone loves Jimmy. How many times has he volunteered to use his carpentry skills to help one of your neighbors? Some kind of missionary group? This house was a shrine to you. And what did you do? You are throwing mud at him. My niece was the most fantastic child I have ever known. I will miss her so much. You had the most loving, devoted, caring, patient husband, and you reward him by tearing out his heart and trampling on it. I'll tell you what, if Jimmy comes back, I'll beg him to be with me. As much as I enjoy a variety of lovers, I would give my life and become the most devoted lover or wife the world has ever seen. You are a stupid, selfish, arrogant person, and I hope you suffer as much as he does, Connie responded sarcastically. Don't be so subtle about your feelings for me. You don't understand how much pressure I was under, how stressed I was. I needed it, and I deserved it. So I had some extra relationships. Nothing important. Jimmy blew it all out of proportion. He overreacted, and will pay. You need to go to a therapist. The planet you live on is several million light years away from the planet everyone else lives on. There's no way to forgive what you did. It was just sex. It was an act of betrayal. Connie had cheated on her husband, Jimmy, and now her sister, Lisa, confronted her about it. Lisa expressed her anger, saying that Connie had even told Jimmy to accept being a cuckold, or else she would keep him away from their daughter. It was a painful blow to Jimmy's masculinity. But Lisa, being protective of her sister, allowed Connie to stay with her for a while, secretly enjoying her suffering. Connie, on the other hand, was determined to fight back. She saw Jimmy taking their daughter without her permission as kidnapping, and she planned to involve the law. She wanted to see how Jimmy would like being in prison with his new bunkmates. The next day, Connie tried to get her life in order. She discovered that all the joint assets they had were now in her name alone. Their checking account, mortgage, car loan, credit card, and even their cell phone were solely her responsibility. At least she had some funds in her personal savings account to find a new place and start rebuilding her life. When Connie called the insurance company to report the fire and seek reimbursement, she was shocked to learn that Jimmy had canceled their homeowner's fire insurance. There would be no insurance coverage for the burned house. All she had was the empty lot where their house once stood. Thankfully, the house was paid off, so she didn't have to worry about a mortgage on a non-existent house. It seemed like every moment brought new responsibilities that she wasn't used to handling. Jimmy had always taken care of these details, and now Connie realized how much he had contributed to their life together. In the midst of all this, Connie realized she had confused a missing person report with a child abduction report. While a missing person could only be reported after 48 hours, a kidnapping could be reported immediately. Determined to take action, Connie went to the police station to report the kidnapping, hoping for justice to be served. "Who was kidnapped?" the police sergeant asked. "My 10-year-old daughter, Madeline Ray Pearson," Connie replied. The sergeant confirmed that Connie was Maddie's mother and asked if there was a father involved. "Yes, Jimmy Greyhawk. He kidnapped her," Connie explained. The sergeant's demeanor changed as he recognized the name. "Jimmy Greyhawk, the carpenter?" he asked. Connie confirmed and clarified that it was not a custody dispute or part of a divorce. Jimmy had simply taken Maddie and left. The sergeant's smile faded as he realized the seriousness of the situation. "Didn't he burn down his house before leaving?" he asked. Connie was frustrated by his reaction. "Our house. He burned down our house," she corrected him. The sergeant apologized for his insensitivity and explained that Jimmy's actions had resonated with many men in town who had been betrayed by their wives. Connie questioned how he knew about the fire, and the sergeant explained that he had spoken to the police who were at the scene and that rumors spread quickly in a small town. Connie pleaded for his help, and the sergeant assured her that he would do his job, though he made it clear that he wouldn't show any favors. As Connie seethed with anger, the sergeant prepared himself for the task at hand. He asked for the details of when the alleged kidnapping took place, and Connie provided a vague time frame between Sunday evening and 5:30 Monday evening. The sergeant noted the information and asked if Connie had any idea where they might have gone. Connie admitted that she didn't have any leads. Jimmy was always a bit mysterious when it came to his family. Being Native American, he might have returned to the reservation. The sergeant found this information useful, but needed to know which tribe and reservation Jimmy belonged to. Connie admitted she didn't have that information, but she suggested sending out a patrol force and asking the local police to look for him. The sergeant explained that Indian territories operate differently, almost like foreign countries, with their own systems of government. Requests from outsiders, like the police, might not be treated the same way. They considered making flyers and reaching out to the Interior Department to distribute them to the reservations. Connie asked if there was anything that could help narrow down the search, and after a moment she remembered that Jimmy's boss served with him in the army and might have useful information. The sergeant encouraged her to talk to him, as he might be more receptive than the police. Meanwhile, the sergeant asked if Connie had any recent photos of Jimmy and Maddie. Connie explained that Jimmy was usually the one taking pictures, and most of them were lost in the fire. The sergeant was surprised that Connie didn't have any photos in her wallet or on her phone. Connie then remembered she had an older photo of Maddie on her phone, though she looked different now. The sergeant sighed and commented on how it reflected her feelings towards her husband and daughter. He suggested bringing any recent photos from her parents when she could. Connie explained that she was too busy to worry about keeping photos in her wallet, as that's what photo albums were for. As Connie returned to work for the first time since the fire, she couldn't help but notice a change in how her colleagues treated her. There were no smiles, and nobody spoke to her unless she initiated the conversation. Even those who used to call her by her first name now addressed her by her last name. Feeling confused and hurt, Connie decided to talk to Sheila, a co-worker she considered a friend. She asked Sheila what was going on, and why she was being treated like she was toxic. Sheila responded by saying that they all felt Connie was poisonous because of what she did with the doctors. They assumed Connie's husband knew about it and approved, but they were relieved to find out he wasn't as weak as they thought. The head of security had informed them about the kind of person Connie's husband was, mentioning that he was a war hero. Sheila also brought up Connie's daughter, emphasizing that doctors and nurses who engaged in inappropriate behavior on duty put patients at risk. Sheila mentioned instances when she couldn't reach Connie while she was supposed to be working, and even recalled a time when Connie had a drop of male seed on her face. Sheila made it clear that they would still do their job, but Connie shouldn't expect any favors from them. Feeling frustrated and hurt, Connie realized that someone was spreading lies about Jimmy being a war hero when he was actually a carpenter. Determined to get to the bottom of things, Connie decided to visit Jimmy's boss, Milton, the next day. When she arrived at the construction company's parking lot, she noticed that Jimmy's space in front of the office sign was empty. Connie entered the building and approached the counter where Milton was standing. She greeted him and asked if Jimmy was working that day. Milton replied, saying that Jimmy had actually quit on Monday. If Jimmy wasn't such a good friend, Connie would have been upset with him for leaving without warning. But after hearing what he told her about Connie's actions, she not only understood, but also supported his decision to leave. Connie asked Milton if he knew where Jimmy and Maddie were, but Milton had no idea and believed that Jimmy wouldn't have said anything if he did. Milton explained that Jimmy had a story about being a carpenter in the army to keep people back home from worrying, but in reality, he was part of the reconnaissance team and considered a scout because he was Native American. Jimmy's job was to lead missions, and he was often the first one to face danger. Somehow, he always managed to come out unharmed. Milton shared that Jimmy had earned both a bronze and a silver star for his bravery, but Connie was surprised because Jimmy never mentioned it. Connie then asked about Jimmy's tribe or reservation, but Milton didn't know and refused to say. The only person Jimmy talked to about Native American affairs was his best friend, Tommy White, Elk Out. Unfortunately, Tommy had been killed just before he and Jimmy were supposed to return home. Connie realized that Jimmy had risked his life to save Tommy and received a silver star for his actions. Feeling overwhelmed, Connie thought to herself that she had cheated on a war hero, and she couldn't imagine things getting any worse. Connie wondered why Jimmy never shared his life before the army with her. She wished he was there so she could ask him. The next day, Connie and Dr. Zander were called into the administrator's office at work. They didn't say anything to each other, knowing that the meeting wouldn't benefit them. Mr. Chambliss greeted them coldly and informed them that he had found out about their sexual relationship on hospital grounds during business hours. He initially considered giving them a reprimand, but after pressure from the hospital board, he had no choice but to fire them. Their licenses would also be suspended for at least a year. Connie and Dr. Zander were escorted by security guards to collect their personal belongings from their lockers. As they were leaving, Gregory approached Connie and blamed her for his wife receiving a letter and photos. He expressed his anger and said he never wanted to see her again. Connie felt defeated as she emptied her locker. She had lost her job, her home, her husband, her daughter, her friends, and had little family support. She was left with only herself and wondered what she should do now. Meanwhile, while traveling with Maddie, Jimmy made a phone call. He called the Turtle Mountain Nature Reserve and asked to speak to Hank Garcia. When asked who was calling, Jimmy decided it would be better not to say. The person on the other end agreed to see if Hank would answer the call, and there was a moment of silence on the phone. Hank Garcia answered the phone call and demanded to know who was calling. Jimmy Greyhawk identified himself and expressed his desire to come back. Hank was initially unwelcoming and threatened to end the call. But Jimmy pleaded with him, mentioning that the Cloud Maiden's granddaughter, Maddie, was with him. Hank paused for a moment and asked about Maddie's age and abilities. Jimmy explained that Maddie was 10 years old and had started having visions a few years ago. She was the one who saw their return. Hank acknowledged that very few people would agree to let Jimmy come back, but Jimmy insisted that he had changed and was willing to beg the tribe for forgiveness. Hank admitted that if it weren't for Maddie being the Cloud Maiden's granddaughter, he wouldn't even consider raising the issue of Jimmy's return to the council. However, there was no guarantee that they would accept him. Hank asked for Maddie's name, and Jimmy explained that it was short for Madeline. He shared that his mother, Cloud Woman, had foreseen the birth of his daughter and had helped him overcome his hatred for his family and people. Cloud Woman knew she wouldn't be there to teach Maddie, so she gave Jimmy instructions to follow before returning Maddie to be trained by the elders. Jimmy described Maddie as young but mature for her age. Hank offered to talk to the council on Jimmy's behalf and scheduled a meeting for the day after tomorrow at 7 p.m. on Jian. He asked for Jimmy's contact number to confirm his attendance. Jimmy provided his number and ended the call. Maddie reassured her father, saying that Cloud Woman would be with them. Jimmy received a call from the council, and they agreed to meet with him and Maddie as soon as possible. The elders who remembered Cloud Woman were influential enough to allow Jimmy to present his case before the council. Jimmy and Maddie arrived at the Turtle Mountain Council meeting, where Maddie immediately caught the attention of the men. They bombarded her with questions about her powers, and whether she would be willing to study with a healer, even if it meant being separated from her father. Maddie was confused by these questions, and gave honest but brief answers. She admitted that she couldn't provide any evidence of her abilities. Afterward, she was thanked and allowed to leave. Little Dove, the healer, arrived and spoke with Maddie before the council meeting. During the meeting, one of the council members asked about the abilities a young girl like Maddie might have. Little Dove explained that Cloud Woman had been her spirit guide, and that she had felt her presence many times. She believed that Maddie had a strong connection to the spirit world, but there was also a lot of influence from the white man in her. It would take time and effort to determine the extent of her connection. When asked if they should let Maddie stay, Little Dove was definite in her response, saying that she welcomed the challenge of teaching Maddie, and that Maddie herself was eager to learn. However, she made it clear that Maddie and Jimmy were a package deal. If the tribe didn't accept both of them, Maddie would not stay. After Little Dove left, the council members were in agreement that Maddie should stay, but they were still hesitant about allowing Jimmy to stay. They turned to Hank for his opinion. Hank invited both Jimmy and Maddie to stay, but with the condition that Jimmy make a gesture of apology to the tribe. If it turned out that Maddie had no abilities, then they would both have to leave. Jimmy pondered for a while on what kind of gesture would be enough. He knew carpentry, so he noticed that the medical clinic was in poor condition. The building was old, dirty, and falling apart. It was not a suitable place for healing. Jimmy decided that building a new clinic would be his gesture of apology. Maddie's teacher joined her in choosing the best location for the new clinic. Finally, the council had to approve their decision. Now, all that was left to do was to build the clinic. Jimmy had a plan in mind. It wasn't too difficult for him since he had experience building a clinic during a business trip to Nicaragua. This time, he had to buy all the materials himself. The tribe watched as Jimmy worked on building the clinic. He didn't ask for help, and nobody offered to lend a hand. It took several months, but the clinic was built properly. There was a special ceremony to bless the new clinic. From that moment on, Jimmy was conditionally allowed to return to the tribe, but he was still on probation. However, everyone agreed with the decision to let him come back. One night, as Jimmy was walking back to where he and Maddie were staying, he was captured. They stripped him and whipped him with branches covered in thorns. The pain was excruciating, and the scars would remain forever. They wanted Jimmy to understand that the punishment for betraying the tribe would last a lifetime. Jimmy didn't shed a tear throughout the ordeal. He made his way back to the house where Maddie applied ointment to his wounds. Maddie wanted revenge, but her father explained that what they did was necessary to show some people that he had been punished enough. Several years passed, and Jimmy found a carpentry job at the nearby oil fields and in the city. He commuted to work every day with other men from the tribe. The job paid well. During this time, flyers started appearing with old photographs of Jimmy and Maddie, stating that they were missing. There was no mention of the kidnapping. Then, one day, flyers appeared offering a $5,000 reward. Jimmy knew that there were people on the reservation who would probably sell them out for much less money. Although Maddie no longer looked like her old photo, Jimmy still did. Maddie had gotten a tan and had blossomed into a beautiful 14-year-old girl. She was chosen to help sell authentic local jewelry to tourists and casino gamblers. No one could resist Maddie's charm. She just hoped that no buyer would force her to admit that although the jewelry was made by real natives, they were actually made in China. One day, Maddie went to her father and said, "I had a vision that Mom would come." Jimmy knew that the time would come when he would have to face Connie and her likely desire to take Maddie. His emotions were mixed and intense. "What do you think we should do, Cloud Woman?" Jimmy asked Maddie's grandmother. Maddie's visionary abilities grew quickly under the tribe's guidance, and she was given the same name as her grandmother, Honor. "It's time to figure this out," Maddie declared. "I want to see her." "You must see her." The following week, Maddie was selling jewelry to a group of tourists who had just arrived on a tour bus. She spotted a blonde woman browsing through the gift shop and instantly knew who it was. Maddie approached the woman and asked, "Don't you love the craftsmanship of these necklaces? They would look beautiful around the neck of such a pretty woman." The woman turned to the teenage girl and felt her heart skip a beat. There was something about this girl that reminded her of Maddie, but she was taller, tanned, and had completely different hair. "Would you smile at me, princess?" the woman asked. Maddie smiled, revealing her beautiful white teeth. Connie sighed. The Maddie she remembered had a big gap between her front teeth, but this girl had perfect teeth. Connie felt disappointed. "Yes, I would like to buy a necklace," Connie replied. As she and Maddie exchanged remarks, Connie heard a voice behind her. "Hello, Connie. It's been a long time." Connie didn't need to turn around. She knew exactly who was speaking to her. It was Jimmy. She closed her eyes, prepared herself, and then opened her eyes to greet him. She was surprised to see that his face appeared much more serious than she remembered. However, there was no smile on his face. She was afraid of receiving an even worse reaction. She desperately wanted to hug him, but she couldn't see any warmth in his eyes that made her believe he would be open to it. "Jimmy, I'm so glad to see you. I have so much to tell you, but please, tell me where Maddie is. I'm dying to see her. Come back." Maddie was still standing there, but now she had a smile on her face and tears in her eyes. "Hello, Mom, I missed you." They embraced tightly, tears streaming down their faces. "I missed you too, honey. You've grown so much. You're simply amazing. I can't believe I sent you both away. I'm so sorry." More hugs, more tears. Finally, Connie turned to Jimmy and said, "I'm not here to reopen old wounds. I just want to apologize and spend as much time with Maddie as possible. Are you going to try to take her away from me?" "No, I don't want to ruin your life again. I just want to be with Maddie for as long as you'll let me." "What about your job and your boyfriend or husband?" Connie replied, "When I found out you two were here, I quit my job and put my things in storage. Since you left, I haven't had a boyfriend or husband. I went on some dates, but no relationships worked out. You taught me a tough lesson, and I deserved it. I haven't been with anyone since you left. I didn't want to start a new relationship until I healed from the old one," Jimmy admitted. "I didn't start a new relationship either. I was afraid that I couldn't trust another woman. It didn't work out the first time. By the way, we're divorced, right?" "Yes, I had to file for divorce to get government benefits that I needed to survive after I lost my job as a nurse. I used to be a nurse. I was a nurse. I was a nurse. I was a nurse. I was a nurse," Connie repeated, emphasizing her past profession. "I even went back to school and became an apron. Is there anything Maddie needs that you'll let me buy for her?" Jimmy looked offended. "No, Maddie has everything she needs," he replied. Finally, A smile appeared on his lips. And almost everything she wants, she's already a teenager. Maddie joined the conversation, asking, "Mom, you won't stay for long, right?" Connie responded, "It's up to you two to decide. I have a room booked at the Economy Lodge Hotel." Maddie made a face. Ugh, that place is full of bedbugs. "You will stay with us?" she said confidently. "No, I can't force myself on you and your father, baby," Connie replied. Maddie insisted. "First of all, I'm not a child, and we have a spare bedroom. Now, let's get your luggage." Connie hesitated, saying, "No, I need to talk to your father first." But Jimmy intervened, assuring her, "Maddie and I have already discussed everything. It will be much easier for you to spend time with Maddie if you live with us. I trust you understand that this does not mean any renewal of the relationship between you and me. You will be there as Maddie's mother and nothing more." Connie nodded, saying, "Certainly, I understand. I hope you'll let me help with cooking and other things. I won't feel good if I don't stay." They all chuckled, and Maddie added, "Phew, I hope your cooking has improved." "Sorry, Mom, but your cooking sucks." Jimmy told Connie to go to her room while he drove up in the Jeep to pick her up and her things. The trip was short, and they passed through the tourist part of the reservation before reaching one of the residential areas. They stopped in front of a house that had a Western Plains theme, just like the others around it. Inside, wooden and Indian decorations filled the space. Jimmy carried Connie's luggage into the spare bedroom. As Connie looked around, she noticed the room had a feminine touch. "Is this your room, Maddie?" she asked. Maddie corrected her, saying, "It was Songbird's room. She is my father's cousin who helped us until we didn't need much help anymore. But it would be nice if you could help a little." Tears welled up in Maddie's eyes as she continued, "I'm so glad to see you again, Mom." Connie turned to Jimmy and said, "Jimmy, I need to talk to you first. You may not want to listen to what I have to say, but I have to say it." Jimmy stood there silently, waiting. I denied for a long time that I had done anything wrong, even though everyone told me I had seriously messed up. It was only when my mother finally spoke to me that I realized the pain and suffering I caused my own daughter. I was the reason she couldn't see her only granddaughter. Finally, I couldn't bear it anymore. I went to see a therapist and started to become a better person. I know these are just words, but I hope you can see enough change in me to allow me to get to know my daughter again. I can never expect you to forgive me, and I'm ready to live with that. I ruined my life and the life of my family. I deserve all the punishment you gave me and more. All I can say now is that I'm very sorry." Jimmy remained expressionless, but in his mind, he acknowledged that Connie was right about one thing. They were just words. However, Maddie wanted her here, so he decided to tolerate Connie for as long as he could. As the weeks went by, a routine settled into the house that seemed to work for everyone. Connie took care of most of the housework and spent a lot of time getting to know Maddie and learning about the tribe. Connie made sure to be respectful and not show any signs of flirting with Jimmy. The conversations at the dinner table were similar to those they had in their past lives, although Connie's work schedule as a nurse often kept them apart. One evening, Connie asked Jimmy if they could have a talk. "I've been here for several weeks now, and I've loved every moment spent with you and Maddie. I think it's time we discuss what our next steps should be," she said. Angry, Jimmy asked, "You're not suggesting taking Maddie back to where we came from, are you?" "No, Jimmy, not at all," Connie quickly reassured him. "I don't want to leave with Maddie. That's not the issue. What I mean is, I can't keep relying on you two. I think I need to find a job. I spoke to the people at the reservation clinic, and they offered me a job. It may have long hours and low pay, but how could I refuse?" Connie tried to lighten the mood. "So, it's time we discuss whether I should find my own place. Don't you like having me here?" "I enjoy being here. But sometimes I can't tell if you want me to stay. Sometimes you seem happy, and other times you look like a man ready to burn down the house he built with his own hands. What do you think would be best?" Jimmy didn't allow himself to think too far into the future. He took each moment as it came, protecting his heart from trusting Connie again. However, he couldn't deny that Connie seemed to have truly changed, and was as good, if not better, than when they first got married. "I think I need some more time to think," he replied. "Maybe it would be easier for you to make a decision if I wasn't here. There's a room for rent in Montana that I can afford, and it's not too far away. Tomorrow, I'll move my things there. Connie nodded, understanding his need for space. All right, Jimmy. Take all the time you need. I just want what's best for all of us. No matter what you decide, I want you to know that I will always be grateful to you and Maddie for letting me back into your lives, even though I don't deserve it. The next morning, Connie woke up to the sound of crying. Without thinking about her appearance, she hurried into Maddie's room. But to her surprise, Maddie was fast asleep. Confused, she realized that the crying was coming from Jimmy's bedroom. Connie approached his door cautiously. She opened it quietly and saw Jimmy sitting on the edge of the bed, wearing only his underpants, with his head in his hands, sobbing. She sat down next to him and started crying too. Jimmy, what's wrong? Can I do anything to help? Is my presence here making things worse? Connie asked, running her hand down his back and feeling the scars she had never seen before. Oh God, Jimmy, what happened? It's part of what I had to go through to earn back the trust of the tribe. It was horrible. It's all my fault. None of this would have happened if I had just been faithful. I thought I suffered a lot, but I was never physically punished, Jimmy confessed. I'm sorry, baby. Please tell me what I can do to make things better. After taking a few deep breaths to calm himself, Jimmy spoke again. I don't deserve this. I can't handle having you here anymore. It's too hard. I'm really sorry. I hurt you in ways I never could have imagined. I'm such a fool. I'll leave first thing in the morning. I'm really sorry. Connie stood up, ready to go back to her room, but Jimmy grabbed her hand. The problem is that I can't be around you without wanting to be with you, like we were when we were married. You're so beautiful, and I keep thinking about the times we made love and just held each other. It hurts my heart to see you. The part of me that hated you for betraying our family is slowly fading away. I know that that's not why you came here. So, I think it's best if you come back home. It was too hard for me to know that you were close by and not here in this house. I promise that Maddie can come visit for a long time, and you'll always be welcome here whenever you want. Connie started to cry too, gathering her courage as she spoke. Jimmy, when I came here, I wasn't sure what I wanted from you. I couldn't believe that you could ever forgive me. I've been praying for a long time that you and Maddie would give me another chance. I want to stay. I want with all my heart to be your wife again. And I promise to never give you a reason to doubt my love and devotion again. If you want me to leave, I will. But that's not what I want to do. Jimmy stayed silent. Connie moved from hugging to kissing, wanting to see as much of his scars as possible. Finally, she reached his face and held his head in her hands. Her touches and kisses felt even better than he remembered. He couldn't resist and kissed her back passionately. The couple hugged, cried, laughed, and kissed for several minutes. A new routine began. Jimmy continued working as a carpenter, and Connie worked long hours as there weren't enough nurses. They didn't talk about getting remarried. They kept separate bank accounts, and Connie paid her share. Although they slept together again, Connie used the guest bedroom on nights when she came home late and tired. It just seemed easier that way. Maddie went to school and continued working with her spiritual director. In some ways, it felt like the old days were back, just with a Native American background. But this should have been a clue. Old bad habits started to return along with the good ones. One day, Jimmy came home early because of bad weather, and there was no carpentry work to be done indoors. He was there to greet Maddie when she came home. Hey Maddie, you're a little late, aren't you? Did you stay somewhere? Maddie replied, Yes, Dad. We need to talk. I don't like the sound of that. Problems with a boy? No, problems with a woman. Jimmy's first thought was that she was going to talk about being a lesbian, but he quickly dismissed that thought. Maddie talked too much about boys. Who or what do you mean? Jimmy asked, his heart filled with horror. It's Mom again, Maddie replied. Jimmy couldn't believe it. Not again. Did you see something in a vision? He asked. No, this time I saw it with my own eyes. I went to Mom's clinic for a minute and saw her leaving a room with Dr. Patel. He forgot to zip up his pants, and Mom was wiping something from her mouth. I went to the front door, but I didn't come out. I acted like I had just walked in. Mom greeted me, and we talked a little. She looked really guilty. We said goodbye, and I pretended to leave. But I was standing right outside her office door when she said to Dr. Pal, "We have to be more careful." I heard them kissing before I left. Jimmy withdrew into himself, as he often did in stressful situations. Maddie changed the subject, bringing up her own concerns. "Talking about visions, I'm losing my strength. It seems like puberty might mess them up. My spiritual director warned me about this. Soon, I might not be able to help the tribe anymore. You know, some council members might want to kick us out. I've enjoyed our time here, but you're the only one I can't lose." Jimmy pondered for a moment before responding. "So, you think it's time to leave again?" Maddie nodded. "Absolutely right. Where should we go this time?" she asked. Jimmy smiled and replied, "Hawaii sounds good. They probably need carpenters there." Jimmy smiled back at Maddie. "Then we can begin." "When do we leave?" he asked eagerly. Maddie replied, "As soon as we get ready." "Oh, I have one request." Jimmy guessed what she was going to say and expressed his opinion. "Oh no, not this again. Please. It was so much fun." Maddie hesitated but agreed. "Okay, but we have to be careful. And this time, we'll take all our money. She has what she has in her own account." Meanwhile, Connie heard the sirens wailing in the distance. A recent conversation with Maddie helped her draw the necessary conclusions. She quickly ran out of the clinic and made her way to the house she shared with Jimmy and Maddie. She knew she had made the right decision. After all, Maddie had seen her with Dr. Patel. Damn, how could I be so selfish and arrogant again? Connie thought to herself. Make sure to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss out on any updates. And stay tuned for the next story, because trust me, it's going to be even more exciting than this one.